Hello, we'll get started here in just a few moments. Give everyone a couple of minutes to join us. Debbie, I think it's just you so far. I texted you. Hi, welcome. We'll get started in just one extra minute. Give a moment for everyone to sign on. Just an extra minute here. Still make sure to honor our one hour together. I put a comment in the chat. You guys are welcome to put in questions there. I think you'll remain muted and videos off, but you're welcome to put questions in the chat. If there is time, I'm happy to go in and answer any of those questions. And I'll also have some options at the end that if you are looking for more help, wanting to do some more conversations, ways that we can facilitate that for you. Go ahead and share my screen and we can get going. I may not be able to see the questions as we go along while I have the PowerPoint slides up, but I will try to do that if I'm able. Right, so we are going to be talking today about, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm going to do it this way. I need my notes up. So I'm going to present the slides through this route here. I know that's not the largest on your screen, but it's what I'll be able to do so I can still see my notes. All right, presenting through Canva. So learning how to do that here today. Thank you guys for joining us. What brought you here today was either wanting to prepare for some stages you see coming with your child, or you're already experiencing some difficulties. So I'm excited to just have an opportunity to address a lot, hopefully, of the things you're experiencing or things that you're thinking about. What's rolling through your mind with your child as we deal with lying, which is very hard. So our objectives today are for all of you to consider why this bothers us as parents. Obviously, lying is bothersome. That is very understandable. But we want to explore if you're having some really extreme reactions or some extreme fears to what you're experiencing with your child in the area of lying, we want to consider why that might be. We'll take some time to understand the why behind lying and then discuss some practical suggestions for dealing with that behavior. Okay, so why am I so affected as a parent? This can really be a big hot button issue for many parents, really hitting at that fear of what your child could turn into, or what else could they possibly be hiding from us if they're lying about these little things. What bigger things are they lying about? Really hitting at that own fear inside you as a parent that can get triggered for many different things that your children do, but certainly lying hits at a special place in that. I think lying really goes against our American cultural values. This is a big value in our society. We want honesty, we want integrity above a lot of other things. This is a really high value, especially in our Western world. And that's okay. And there are reasons why that, right? Honesty is a good thing. It creates good situations when everyone can be open and honest. But there is something that particularly values that in our American culture that I think is always important for us to pay attention to, and why this might make it harder for us when our children lie. It makes us as a parent feel out of control. This is something you cannot force your child to do. You cannot force them to tell you the truth. And that, as a parent, can really make us spiral into some desperation. And how can I make my child stop lying? How do I get back control of whatever the situation is that they're lying about? That can really hit at us, and we can turn towards some pretty desperate actions to try to regain control. This might even trigger something in our own history. Maybe there's something in your childhood, a parent, a close friend, a family member, a trusted authority in your life that lied to you in a pretty big way. And so either to your knowledge or maybe even unknown to you, this could be triggering your past experiences. If you're being lied to by your child, that could feel a lot like deception that you have felt, or maybe a big lie that you've told to other people and you carry some guilt from that. So then you see your child lying and it's even triggering your own guilt for maybe a large lie or deception that you have been responsible for. There could be a feeling that you don't want them to win. This kind of gets back into the control issues. We don't want to feel like our child is getting away with something, right? That we know they've told a lie. We know it's not true, and they're kind of getting away with it because they are continuing to just dig into that lie and dig into that lie. And that can really get at our need inside of us as parents, that we need to feel like we're winning over our child. It feels silly when you put it in those terms, but if you can really think about it, it might be something that you're feeling, and that's understandable, right? That it's hitting at that control inside us as parents. During your training process, we have really focused on training you to see beyond the behavior in your child, and lying is really no different. If we put our focus on stopping the lie, stopping the outward behavior, then we're missing the heart of the child. We're missing what is driving that lie to happen. So we're going to talk a lot today about how to not be distracted by the lie that your child is telling. Okay, so children's lies in general. At younger ages, this is very developmentally typical. Children start to understand this world between pretend and real. What is play? What is fantasy? What is real life? We've got imaginary friends coming into play, and stories they're telling and you're maybe telling them stories that are just made up and magical, and all of that is really normal. There's a fun, playful side to that, but then there's also kind of a normal progression for children to start to learn the lines, right, between what is real and what isn't. There's even a term for it. It's called primary process lying. This is typically around the age of 4 to 5. Kind of an immature form of lying, and the children are just starting to understand that and starting to play around with that. We will generally see this when a child is telling a pretty obvious lie. Okay, so they have chocolate all over their face, but they're telling you, no, I didn't eat that chocolate. I didn't do it. They do not have the ability to understand that you could tell the truth there, that you could either see the evidence or, in their very primitive processing, the parent wasn't there eating chocolate with me. So there is no way that they know about this, right? They can't make that leap in conception. And so you're going to see this a lot more with things that are like, this is very obvious that this is not what happened or something else happened here. And that's going to be pretty normal. If your child has some developmental delays, if there is some things that are more immature, or even at older ages, if they didn't progress through this development stage the way that a typical child would, then it's something that can still linger even at older ages and outside of that 4 to 5-year-old age range. But it's really important to understand that there is some developmental naturalness to lying, right? Not in extreme forms, but in smaller ways as children start to learn and understand boundary lines. I think it's very important for you to know and to keep in mind that children usually don't lie for no reason. Even if that reason's faulty, illogical, irrational, there is a reason in their head that they're doing it. And that is your challenge as a parent, is to understand what the reason is. So what could some of those reasons be? Okay, so these are reasons that any child lies. Okay, so we're not just talking about adopted kids right now. We're talking about any child. Could be for them to, as a way to establish their identity, right? So our identity is who we are and how we project who we are to the world around us. They, especially as they're getting into middle school years, into adolescence, is a huge time when they're really trying to understand their identity. Who am I? So they might be telling lies to fit in with their peers. Oh yeah, I've done that too. To pretend they are somebody that they aren't, either in certain crowds, at home, in a way to save face, to just establish a little bit of who they are. It could be to get attention, right? That if I tell this big dramatic story or I say this horrible thing happened to me, then people will give me attention, even negative attention, right? That if kids are kind of starving for attention or they need attention in that moment from peers, from family, then they could tell that lie to get some attention. They could be feeling hostility towards you as a parent, and they utilize that lie as a way to get back at you, right? That could be a reason that they know they can kind of get you with that, or they can one-up you with that lie, or withholding some kind of information from you. A big reason we see it is to avoid getting in trouble. That's kind of a natural response, right? Like if we're all honest with ourselves as adults, I'm sure that probably in the last year, all of us could come up with even maybe a little white lie of how we did something to just kind of save ourselves from some difficulty, from some uncomfortableness, right? This is kind of a natural thing that it makes sense that children don't want to get in trouble. So they're gonna lie if they think they can get away with it, right? That's not okay. So don't hear my tone of voice as saying, that's all right, just let it happen. That's not what I mean. But trying to understand the reasoning behind it, there's a reason in their head that makes sense to them. Maybe if they want to avoid hurting someone's feelings or making someone else feel uncomfortable or hurt, then they could make up a lie, tell a story. They want to hide or cover up something that's shameful. Again, that's kind of like, yeah, it makes sense when you really think about it. Of course, that's logical to them in the moment. Even there's consequences that hurt other people. They're covering up and kind of hiding their own shame. It could happen when a child is already dysregulated. They're already having a hard day. They're already been throwing tantrums. They've been having meltdowns. There's other things going on. And so throwing the lie on top of it just to try to settle something in their own selves, or they are so dysregulated that they aren't even in control of their own minds to know, oh, do I need to tell the truth here? Oh, wait, what I just told was a lie. But they're already so dysregulated that it just kind of falls in line with the dysregulation. They could lack skills to handle conflict. Conflict is so uncomfortable, so scary, something they don't want to do. They've not learned how to do it. Growing up in childhood and earlier years, they don't know how to handle conflict. And so they'll lie to avoid that. Or they could just lack a cause and effect thinking, either because of their age or it's kind of a lesson and a skill that they haven't learned, that not really understanding how their lie impacts other people or impacts other situations around them. There's no cause and effect. So in their brains, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I stole this from somebody and I told my mom I didn't steal it. It doesn't matter, when really it does, because you stole something from somebody. You harmed another person and they don't fully understand that yet. So now let's add the adoption complication on top of this. So this is a common question I get from families. How do I know if this is kind of typical child development or is this adoption? Is my child behaving this way because they're adopted, or would they be doing this anyway, even if they weren't adopted? My typical answer is that just about anything you're experiencing with your child is typical, but you have the added complication of adoption, abandonment, trauma, whatever their history is, that's just fuzzing that up a little bit, making it worse, making your child more sensitive. Maybe every child would be upset about that, but because of your child's history, the upset feelings become the end of the world and full meltdown tantrum. So I think that's important to keep in mind, because especially with things like lying, it's really easy to think there's something really wrong with your child. That can just kind of happen in adoption, right? That this is my child that's having this problem. It's their issue or their issue with me, which could be true, but it could also just be, it's a little bit of the typical with a little bit of the adoption complication. So keeping that in mind, we also want to be mindful of developmental delays with our children. Very common with our adopted kids, especially foster care or international, that we're growing up in a setting that wasn't the healthiest, especially in the first 3 years of life. So they could have some developmental delays. They could be 11 years old, but act like a 4-year-old. And it doesn't have to be in every way, right? So maybe in some ways they act like a typical 10 or 11-year-old, but only in one area. Socially, they're a little bit underdeveloped, or in this area of kind of cause and effect, understanding lying, that is one area where they are kind of immature and stunted, even if everything else, they act like a typical child of their age. So just wanting to be mindful of those developmental delays. That they really can get stuck in a lot of primitive processing, especially depending on when their traumatic experiences happened. They can get kind of, you've heard the term arrested development. They kind of get stuck in that developmental stage. And that's important to keep in mind when we're looking at things that might cause them to lie. Which leads us to that. What is the cause and that root of lying? There's lots of things with our adopted kiddos that can be that, but I tried to summarize them down to maybe they're operating out of fear, operating out of insecurity, or operating out of self-protection. So next I want to take a look at that list of the reasons any child lies that we looked at just a moment ago. And I want to look at that again through the lens of what could be the root that is complicating a behavior that it can be common among any child. Right, so when we're looking at, they're trying to establish identity, our adopted kiddos are even more sensitive to that because they have a complicated story. How they came into this world, how they came into your family is more complicated. So when their peers are already trying to find their identity, our adopted kiddos kind of have an extra layer to that, hitting at fear, hitting at insecurity as a driving reason that they might lie about something that would reflect on their identity, who I am and who other people think that I am or perceive me to be. When they're seeking attention, that really being driven out of fear and insecurity. I don't know if these people really love me. Will they really stay committed to me? I'm afraid they won't. So I have to tell these stories, or I have to pretend I'm always the good child that did nothing wrong. And I'm going to lie about anything that wasn't perfect because I'm so afraid that if I do something wrong, I might get abandoned. They might leave me too. Feeling hostility toward the parent. If you're already struggling in a lot of other areas with your child and attaching to them and growing in that relationship, and there's a lot of other behavioral struggles going on, then that line can just get complicated and mixed up in there. When your child is triggered in fear, when they're triggered in insecurity or feeling like they need to self-protect, then that's going to come out even more, and that be angled toward the parent. Again, the avoiding getting in trouble. If I get in trouble, if I don't do everything right, if I mess up, then they could get rid of me like my other family did. Something could happen to me. They could harm me like my other parents did. So that fear and that self-protection really coming out. Avoiding hurting people's feelings because they feel insecure about the relationship already. They feel uncomfortable. They want to self-protect. Our adopted kiddos are really susceptible to shame, really, really sensitive to it, because ultimately a lot of that insecurity can boil down to, did I lose my biological family because of something I did? Is there something wrong with me? And their self-worth is so sensitive. So when they're doing something that can cause them to feel extra shame, they're going to spiral that much faster than maybe a child that doesn't carry the same history, the same traumas and needs. Dysregulated children, especially their adopted kiddos, that dysregulation gets really big, and it's really hard sometimes for them to come back down and regulate, especially if that fear, insecurity, and protection have been triggered. These kids can really lack skills to handle conflict, kind of hits on some of the things we've already said, but having that fear, that insecurity, that self-protection kicking into gear if there's any kind of conflict around them. So how do they lie to avoid that completely? And then that lack of cause and effect thinking, right? That insecurity can kind of come into play there. If I feel insecure, then I'm going to do something that's going to take care of me, and I'm not really going to think about what the consequences of that might be. And then what I want to add for our adopted children are a couple of other reasons behind those lies that are really important for you guys to think about. And I'm hitting on this topic so much here at the beginning because, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but understanding why your child is misbehaving can help you as a parent handle that misbehavior a little bit better. Right? If I know that this child is not misbehaving, they're not lying to harm me, to attack me, to come at me, but instead they're doing this because of the way their brain's wired, because of their early experiences, because what they learned in their childhood, their early childhood years, is something that takes a long time to work back out of them. This is about the child and their issues and their struggles in their past. It's not about me. It's not even about our family and our relationship. Then that can help put you at a better place to stay regulated yourself and be able to handle the issues that your children are throwing at you. So one big thing I want to add here about adopted children is survival skills. Okay, whatever your child's history was, they learned what they needed to do to survive. They likely, if they're in your home now, there's something that broke down with their original biological parents, right? Whether that's death, that's abandonment, that's abuse, that's neglect, lots of different things. Some things that weren't even at the fault of their parents, but it's just the circumstances, and this is where the child landed. There are impacts from that, and your child had to learn how to take care of themselves to a certain extent. They didn't have a loving mom and dad, a loving dad there to give them all the care, all the attention, and help them grow up in the most secure, loving, and protective space as they could. And so the child had to learn how to survive. So a lot of these things that look like intentional manipulation, intentional deception, or defiance is really a survival skill. They learned that if I can lie, if I can get out of trouble, if I can avoid making anyone uncomfortable, if I can appear to be the most perfect and well-behaved, then I'm not going to get harmed. Nothing else bad is going to happen to me. So they've learned how to do that. So your child may be lying just kind of as a second nature. And that's not really their fault, right? It is your job then as a parent to redirect them and help them learn new skills. They don't have to survive in your home anymore. So how do we help them kind of learn what those new skills need to be when that fear, that insecurity, and that self-protection is kicking in? And then the other thing I want to add is some cultural considerations, especially for any families here that adopted internationally, or you're adopting a child even domestically, just from a different kind of place in our society than you. There's some cultural considerations to keep in mind here, especially when it comes to lying. There is something, kind of a concept called a shame-based culture and a guilt-based culture. Here in the Western world, generally, and these are kind of broad statements, but generally we're a little bit more guilt-based. Lying is always wrong. It's always, always, always wrong. Telling the truth is always, always, always right, right? And then you feel guilty if you tell a lie. So I don't want to feel guilty, so I'm going to tell the truth. Okay, so that's where kind of our value is steeped in. For a lot of other countries around the world, they can be more shame-based. And so lying is okay if you're saving face, if you're protecting your family, if you're protecting yourself from shame, or from bringing shame onto your family, from bringing shame onto other people, then lying is a little bit more acceptable. So we want to keep that in mind, that sometimes children are lying because they think they're actually doing a good thing, right? But our values and our culture says it's always wrong. It's always, always, always wrong. So just keeping that cultural consideration in mind, especially if you've adopted internationally. It's an important concept there. Before we move on to kind of some strategies for dealing with lying and this behavior, I want to address a little bit about kind of the morality, right? And that goes a little bit with that guilt-based culture, that lying can really become a moral issue for us. It's right or it's wrong, right? There's kind of that, those two camps. It's either right or wrong. And that is true, right? Yeah, there's absolute truth in that. But what I want to challenge you guys to also think about today, that lying isn't always just a moral issue. It certainly doesn't start that way. That it really can become an issue of skill, right? And if a child has learned and understood how lying can impact themselves, how it can impact other people, what's going on with the reasons that they're lying. I had a family one time I was working with, they had adopted a 4-year-old internationally. And they were talking with me about some struggles they were having, that this child was lying. And the way the parents described it to me, and this is a 4-year-old, they said, we just think he lacks integrity. I was like, okay, I was kind of a little taken aback by that, because that is assigning a really big adult understanding of character to a 4-year-old. Right? Especially when that child was in the age where it would be very typical for them to be learning to understand lying. Plus they were adopted, and who knows what their history had taught them about lying. So I bring that story up because that, again, that's triggering that fear in parents, right? My child is going to grow up to be an adult with bad character because they are telling lies right now in this moment at this age. So watching for kind of that fear that's triggering in us, and understanding that we can't always put an adult level of processing onto a child, right? That as adults, we can process the implications and the reasons of lies in a much broader and more complex way than a child can. So when you're offended as if another adult had lied and offended you, but you're putting that on a child, that isn't really a fair burden to place on them. So being able to recognize that and try to adjust. Again, that doesn't mean we just let them lie, doesn't mean we let it go, it doesn't mean we don't worry about it. But we don't want to always assign the adult level of intention that can imply, right? If we're really misunderstanding a child's ability for conception and what their brain development has been able to achieve at the age that they are, at the developmental level they are, with the special needs that they have. Okay, so let's jump over to our to some of these strategies. So I'm going to throw a lot of ideas at you, okay? And I'm happy to share this PowerPoint and try to get a little bit of notes in here so that you would have it and oh, I forgot, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to put in a link for you to sign up if you need a certificate of this training hour, either because of if you're going through another adoption process or you need the training hours. We've got a few staff members on the call today. If you need that, then go ahead and sign up in that link, and then I can get you a certificate here by the end of the week to show that you were here. And I'm also happy to provide the PowerPoint. So you can sign up in that as well if you want the PowerPoint notes. So some different strategies. I'm going to throw a lot of different ideas at you. What is really complicated about giving strategies for lying, it is very circumstantial. Okay, so the same strategies isn't going to work for every parent with every kid and every need and every age, right? So I'm going to throw a lot of different ideas that you are going to have to kind of critically think through to apply to what you've been experiencing with your child or what you might experience with them in the future. The biggest thing is to remain curious about what is driving that lie. That is what is probably the most universally applicable to everybody, is going back to searching for the reasons and then getting at the reasons for what's going on with that lie. So I've got a lot of different strategies to kind of throw out there. And then I have some ways that you can process your individual circumstances with us and with our team here at Nightlight if you need some extra help kind of processing and putting some of these things into practice within your current parenting. Okay, so first, and probably above anything else, want you to manage your own reaction to the lying. You know, when a child is lying, that is very likely triggering your own stress response, triggering your own fears. So being aware that they are probably lying out of their fear, which is then triggering your fear. And it's your burden as the adult to stop the escalation of that fear in your reaction to what's going on. So if you just react quickly out of your own fear to what's going on with your child, it's going to make them more likely to dig their heels in, dig harder into that lie, to stay protected, to fight off the fear that they're experiencing. So being mindful of your own response to them, right? And this is applicable across anything that's going on with your child, being aware and being mindful of your own internal struggles with whatever's going on with your child. But when you sense that they're telling a lie and you jump in out of your own fear, I know you're lying. Why are you lying? You need to tell me the truth. What really happened? I don't believe you. Then the child, like I said, is going to probably try to dig in to try even harder to convince you, because at that point it is pretty hard for them to go, yeah, okay, yeah, actually I was lying. Okay, never mind. You know, that once they kind of get so far into it, it's pretty unlikely they're just going to humbly admit their mistake and walk back out of it, right? And so that burden really is on you as the parent to try to lead that. So stop to question your own intense reactions. Are you responding? Kind of what we said earlier. Why is this so bothersome? Are you responding out of your own history and experiences with lying? Is this triggering you? Is this triggering your fear, your need to be in control? And is that driving your reaction to your child in the moment? Focus on remaining calm so that you aren't further pushing into their fear center, because once that is fully taken over, you can't address a whole lot in that moment. It's just not possible. And to have the expectation that that's going to happen is only going to hurt you more as a parent, because the child's not going to respond the way you want them to. And to really try your best to not take it personal. They are likely not trying to hurt you with their lies and what they're doing. They are focused. They're very self-focused, right? We always think everyone is thinking more about us than they actually are. We're all only thinking about ourselves all the time, right? How do I protect myself? How do I take care of myself? How do I come across to people? We're all very self-centered, very self-focused. It's the same with our kids in these moments of lying. They are trying to protect themselves, even though you're not going to harm them. You're not doing anything that tells that child you're going to harm them. But that is how they feel, and that's what they're operating out of. So to try to not take that as personal. I want you guys to seek to get information instead of just asking yes or no questions. Okay, so this would look like, instead of, did you hit a kid at school today? Yes or no, right? That opens a very easy door for a child to lie. Nope, didn't do that. Nope, Really easy to lie with one word, right? A lot harder to lie with a big long story. So instead, if you say, hey, Betty, your school called today. They said that there was some trouble at school today. Can you tell me what happened? Right? In a very calm, in an inquisitive way. It's also going to help you get your child's side of the story, right? If they, how many times have we seen this, right? Where the kid is getting poked and then finally they snap and react, and the reaction is the only thing that's caught by the parent, by the teacher. And so we think that child was doing something, not understanding that somebody else maybe started it. Somebody else was poking, somebody else was making comments, doing something, and then finally your child reacts and they're the one that got in trouble, and nobody believes them, right? Nobody believes that another child maybe started that. So when you approach your child and saying, did you hit somebody at school or did you yell at somebody? Instead, it's, well, tell me what happened. And they're saying, well, Johnny, he was doing this and blah, blah, blah. Right? You're going to get maybe more of the truth, and your child's going to feel like you're on their side, and they don't have to lie to you because you're on their side. Not you're coming at them just like the teacher did, just like the principal did, just like the other students in class did, but instead you're coming alongside them and you're on their side. Yeah, so if your child's fearful, if you say, okay, what happened today? Your teacher called, heard there was some trouble. Tell me what happened. Oh, nothing happened. It was a great day. Okay, but you know that's not true, right? You already heard the story from the teacher. Probably your child's not going to say that. But if they do, you can say, oh, okay, well, that's really interesting. Well, your teacher told me that there was kind of a tough day. I'll let you have a moment and you let me know when you're ready to talk about what happened, and then walk away. Right. And that can help disarm them. Or if you keep pushing in that moment, triggering that fear and that defensiveness, it's going to throw them into a position to be more likely to lie. Where instead, if you've kind of laid the groundwork, hey, I kind of already know what happened, but I want to hear about it from you. I'm gonna give you some space for a little bit. I'll come back and check on you, but you let me know when you're ready to talk about what happened today. And then maybe more likely than not, child's going to wander back in the room and say, okay, this is what happened. I'm ready to talk about it. It helps to disarm them. So then with that, even minimizing the questions that you can ask entirely, especially if you already know the answer, right? Because you saw it happen, because you're very, very certain what happened, somebody else already told you what happened. Don't walk into your child and say, did you do this? When you already know they did, right? You are just setting them up to potentially lie to you and set everybody up for failure. When instead, not even asking questions, you can come in and say, hey, I know that this happened. Hey, I saw you push your brother. Hey, I saw you throw all the toys out of the basket. Let's pick them up. To just immediately address what happened instead of even asking them about it. I think there is a tendency, especially if you know your child is struggling a lot with lying, you want to see if they're going to lie again, right? Like, okay, well, let me test them. And again, outside the situation, that sounds a little silly, but in the moment, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, I'm going to see if they're lying. I want to see if they're going to keep lying to me. I want to see if they're going to tell me the truth. So I'm going to be like, oh, did you do that? What happened? When you know, right? So just take the lying opportunity completely off the table and address what happened. It can be, hey, instead of, did you pull all the toys out of the toy basket? You say, hey, buddy, I need you to pick up all the toys that are outside the basket. And then if they try to say, I didn't pull all the toys out of the basket, it wasn't me, it was my brother. No, I didn't ask who did it. I'm asking you to pick all the toys up and put them back in the basket. Do you want me to help you, or can you do it by yourself? Right? So we're not even giving them the opportunity to do that, especially if you know your child is more prone to it. And we're addressing kind of what's really happened and correcting what's gone wrong. I want to encourage you guys to pick your battles. Okay. So if this is a safety issue, if they're engaging in risky or illegal behavior, that is stuff we want to always address. But if there's tiny little lies, maybe it's okay to let one of them slip, to not even acknowledge it. Just kind of move on. They said, oh, this happened, or, oh, I saw this, oh, wow. And then just keep moving on, or don't even say anything to it. Especially if you know the intention behind it is probably more attention seeking, or it's some of that like seeking identity or trying to just get their brother in trouble or something, to not even address that, especially if it's something that's little.
Avoid becoming a watchdog of just trying to, are they doing something wrong? Did they lie about it? What did they do? Oh no, you need to tell the truth 100% all of the time. Watching for your own anxiety level in that, because nobody enjoys feeling like they are under a microscope. And that is going to probably have a counterproductive effect to overall purpose, right? The overall purpose is we want our children to grow up to be healthy, kind adults that engage in a healthy way with society, right? That's the ultimate goal. And so letting some of the little tiny things go is not going to turn your child into a monster in adulthood. But if they don't feel like they're constantly being watched and constantly like, what's the point? I'm always going to get in trouble anyway. They're nitpicking on everything I do. So why should I even try to tell the truth? Why should I even try to do things right? Because I'm just going to get picked on anyway. So if they don't feel like you're jumping all over everything, then you might start to see an overall behavioral change in the line that's happening. Again, we don't want to do this with things that are risky, that are unsafe, that are some bigger things, especially if you're not picking on all the little things. Then the issues that you do need to address, you're going to get more of your child's attention than if it's just one more in the string of all the other things that they get picked on for. You're going to start to fade into the background. They're not going to care. But when you're actually focusing in on the things that matter, you're going to do it, probably be a little more successful in getting their attention and addressing the issue that you're trying to put some attention on. Playful engagement. This is a TBRI strategy. If you guys have done training with us, read some of the books, it might sound similar. This is always Dr. Purvis's first recommendation for any misbehavior that you're seeing with your child. And I think this can really be helpful even with lying, especially with the little ones, right? Again, we're not doing this necessarily with the big things that matter, but some of the other little lies. They say something happened and you go, what? No, there's no way that happened. And you're saying it in a really playful tone. Then your child might just be like, I was just kidding, because then they're kind of caught, right? But you've done it in a way that gives them an out for them to back out of that lie. But if you're like, that didn't happen, what are you talking about? Then they might get triggered to where they start to dig their heels into that lie. So keeping that in mind to not just get so upset about some of these other little lies and try to just playfully be like, that's not true. No way that happened. Finding some phrases to kind of brush that off could really do a lot with altering kind of your child's behavior, especially in the moment. Okay, so addressing the child and not the lie. Again, not applicable when we're talking about unsafe behavior, risky, really big things. But wanting to, the point of what I'm trying to say with this is to not get distracted and so caught up by the lie that you miss the heart of the child. You miss the reason why something is going on. That you're distracted, right? So like, even if, very simple example, right? That if we're dealing with sickness, right? And we have these outer symptoms, right? I've got some pain going on. And so all I'm doing is something to kind of cover up the pain, but I'm not taking the time to go back and figure out what's causing the pain underneath it all, right? If I have, let's say we have like a bacterial that's causing cold symptoms, right? Where I ultimately need to take an antibiotic to get over it. But if I'm just focused on the outer symptoms, I'm not taking the medicine that fully takes it away. I'm getting distracted by that. So this is kind of the purpose of what I'm trying to get at here. That your children could also be trying to use lying as a way of distracting you away from something else, right? Especially if that self-protection is getting triggered. I don't want to be vulnerable. You're pushing into something I don't want to talk about. So I'm going to lie because you're going to get all upset about the lie and be focused in talking about the fact that I lied, and you're not actually getting to the deeper issue, right? So your child's engaging in drug use, cigarettes, alcohol, sexual risky behavior, right? That if we're so focused on the fact that they lied about sneaking out of the house, or they lied about, they're saying, oh, I didn't smoke, but you can smell it on them, right? Or they're acting high, they're acting drunk, right? And you're so focused on the fact that they lied to you, you're missing that there's a drug problem going on, right? So it's something much bigger. That's what we need to be addressing. The lie is something they're doing to distract, to push people away. but we want to go down to the root of that. So that's what some of this means. Don't ignore the child. Don't ignore the reason behind the lie because you're so distracted by the lie itself. And you're so upset that your child would dare lie to you, that you're so upset that they have hurt you in that way. That's real. And that's okay to have some attention. But if you're completely over consumed by that, you're missing the deeper issue. And that's why you're habitually running into the lies, because perhaps you're missing addressing what's underneath it all. Part of this is also kind of really focusing in on having that conversation with the child, not just jumping to consequences, confrontation about what's going on, but having a conversation to help get at what's underneath that lie. Okay, in the heat of the moment, lessons are not often learned in the height of emotion, right? In the height of fear, in the height of a meltdown or dysregulation. They're not learning a lot of lessons, right? The lying is just taken over. So you're not going to really break through to them in that moment. So the focus should be on diffusing the current situation. And you can always come back to discuss that later with them when everyone's calmed back down. When they're not still triggered by fear and defensiveness and digging into the lie that they are digging into. That they are more open to discussing, even if it's an hour later, could be, later that evening, hey buddy, earlier today, when this happened, you lied to me. And, I want you to know that really, it hurts me when you lie. And I think it hurts you too. I know that you felt scared and that's what was causing you to lie. We love you. We are always here for you. You're always a part of this family. You can always tell me the truth. We can always talk through it. It doesn't just have to always be immediate punishment. And that's what your child's so fearful of. And so they're going to dig into lies with you. But when they know, hey, I can really talk to my parent about this, they can open up and be more willing to open up a little bit more freely. Delayed consequences are not going to be very effective, right? So in the moment, your child's lying. If you don't tell me the truth right now, then you don't get to watch TV later, or you're not going to get dessert later tonight. Your child does not care about later. There's nothing in that that's going to probably redirect them. It might work one time in the moment for that to happen, but ultimately we're looking for overall success, right? And overall healing in this area. So those delayed consequences, especially when they aren't really connected to what's going on with your child and the lie in that moment, and it's not really kind of a natural consequence of what's happening, they're not typically going to be very effective. So especially in that heat of the moment. So if you can't kind of come up with a way to address it right then, you can hit pause on that and circle back to it. If we are coming up with some kind of consequences that you do feel like you need to utilize in that moment because of the lie, because of what's going on, and because of what you're sensing is behind the lie, then we want to make sure that those consequences are related, right? So if they have hit their brother with a toy and they're lying to you about it, then it's not a removal of dessert later, right? It's that, okay, this toy is going away. No, I didn't hit my brother. Okay, well, this is what I think happened. We're going to go ahead and take this toy away until everybody can calm back down, right? Until we can have a conversation about this later. So that's a direct kind of consequence in the moment that's a little bit more related and can help the child tie that consequence into their behavior, and looking for ways to kind of behave better and differently next time. Okay, and then over everything, we want to have connection, right? Especially with a lot of the reasons that you saw earlier about the lying, having a good, trusted connection with your child overall is going to take down their need for lying. Not always, but especially with a lot of the reasons behind that, right? If they feel like they can talk to you about anything, if they aren't so focused on being punished, but they understand they can talk things with you, they can talk things out with you, even if there's consequences for their behavior. They're able to talk with you about it, that they know you're going to listen to them because you listen to them in other circumstances. So if you're really having issues with your child lying, look at your overall connection with them. How are you connecting? How are you building trust in moments that aren't within whatever's going on with the lies that they're telling? How can you connect with them in deeper ways so that they can be more trusting, right? They're engaging in risky behavior with friends, with peers, with boyfriends, girlfriends. They're drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, something's going on there, right? Finding ways to connect with them outside of the discipline moments can get them into a better place where they might be more open with you. Hey, mom, I was at a party last night and this is actually what happened. I came home, I told you it was a great party and I just went to bed, but this is what really happened. And I need to talk to you about that. There might be more opportunities for you to open up that connection with them in that way. Okay, we're coming here right to the end. For older children, you could look at doing kind of a bigger intervention, right? So this is going to be best when there's a lot of chronic lying going on. You've taken a lot of time to look at the reasoning behind the lies. So this intervention isn't just on the lying. The intervention is really on what the reasoning is. And the lying is something you can use as facts on addressing the deeper issues. This is better for older kids. You're approaching them very non-emotionally. This is what we have seen, heard, noticed. This is what we think is happening based on that. We need to talk about this, okay? Not just asking them questions about what they're doing and giving them opportunities to lie, but coming at them very calmly, very non-judgmentally as best as you can to address the bigger issue, kind of in like a more traditional intervention type style. Going to probably happen over several conversations, not just the one time that it's going to fix everything, right? But it's going to start the foundation for you guys to have further communication and further connection over what's going on and what the underlying issue is. And helping you get at, why are they lying? Are they trying to save face? Are they trying to avoid getting in trouble? Are they trying to build an identity? Are they trying to get some attention? And kind of helping even them get at what is motivating their lives. So with that, as we kind of start to wrap up here, wanting to challenge you guys to have some honest self-evaluation, which is hard. I'm a parent and I feel like I fail all the time. And it's really hard to confront that. It's hard to sit in that, wow, I really did that wrong with my kid. And how do I do this better next time? And how do I need to go to them and apologize? How do I make it right? How do I make sure the next time is better and right? But finding that strength in the honesty, even, right? Even within yourself of, how have I been handling this lying? Have I been jumping to consequences? Have I been distracted by the lie? Have I been reacting out of my own fear and control? And so I'm digging my heels in, and then I'm mad that they're digging their heels in, and it's this cycle that we can't get out of. But being able to recognize yourself in that. What should you be doing differently? Talk with your spouse. If you're single, talk with a trusted family member or somebody that's interacting some with your child that can help just be a sounding board for you. This is really how we've been responding to our kid. We got to make some changes here. We need to adjust our strategies. And that might even land into asking questions about how you handle discipline overall. Are you doing a lot of the delayed consequences, really focusing on punishments? The thing with discipline is it is meant to help your child learn what to do, right? So that they aren't, so that they know what to do and they behave well instead of always jumping to misbehavior. And that might be, sometimes with those different discipline techniques can cause a lot more lying, right? That the child learns maybe through that type of discipline that the goal is to just not get caught. So I'm going to lie, I'm going to cover up, I'm going to hide, I'm going to do whatever I can just to not get caught, versus discipline strategies that really help your child focus on how to behave appropriately and to be rewarded naturally for behaving well the first time instead of misbehaving and then focusing on just trying to not get caught. I know that was a lot of my upbringing in the discipline that my parents used. I was very focused on my behavior. And so I learned really quickly how to just not get caught and how do I cover that stuff up, right? So these are hard questions for us to ask ourselves as parents because it's very self-reflective, and we have to challenge ourselves to say, am I doing something the best I can be, or should I adjust some of my strategies? So I challenge you guys that today as we end this in this area of lying specifically, but also even in general, kind of discipline in parenting that could be reinforcing some of the reasons why your child might be turning to lying. Want to leave, this is kind of the last slide I'm going to leave up here so you can see these books. This is some of where my content came from today, and some books that I really like. Beyond Consequences, Logic, and Control hits at several different difficult behaviors, and lying is one of those. It also outlines a lot of where traditional parenting and traditional discipline would give one message, and kind of a different way, a new way of approaching that comes into play, and then it breaks down a lot of these issues that you see with your child. So I think it's a really good one. I pull it out a lot with families that I'm working with. The A to Z of therapeutic parenting. Don't know if you can see me, but I'm gonna hold it up just in case you can. Yeah, I mean, it's literally like a encyclopedia of difficult behavior, and you can look up what your child's doing, and it gives a lot of really good strategies. It helps you understand what could be driving it, and then gives some strategies for handling it. So I think it's a really good one. The Connected Parent from Dr. Purvis, that is written both with her work, and Lisa Qualls is an adoptive mom that has written this book with a lot of practical advice. So those are some resources I would really recommend. You have my name and my email on there. Some options for you guys, kind of where to go from today. We do have a couple of minutes. I'll try to address if there's any questions here. If you had something, pop it in the chat really quickly, and I'll see if I can get to it. But you're welcome to set up a one-time phone call with me. If you've got some bigger habitual lying issues that you feel really mixed up and confused in, and some of the things you heard today gives you some ideas on how to address it, but you're not sure exactly how to flesh it out, you can do a one-time call with me. We also have a coaching program. So that's 4 weeks of working with a coach to really tackle and address some of the stuff that's going on. So this can be for lying, other behavioral issues that you have going on. I'm happy to send you information on that. And yeah, that puts you connected with a coach where you're really going back and forth, working through some real practical strategies for addressing what's going on. And if you're having some big issues with lying, or you see that there's kind of some big issues with the reasons behind the lying, if you're not sure, try journaling to try to follow what's kind of going on with your kid, and see if you can find some themes, some commonalities in some of the lies, and then that can help you get at the roots, right? Oh, they're always lying when I'm asking them about something that's going on socially with their friends. So what's really going on there? They're feeling really insecure at school. They're really struggling to make friends, and they don't want me to know that everyone at school hates them or something, so they're telling me lies about all this stuff that they're doing with friends, but I know that that's not true, and this doesn't really make sense. Then that can help you kind of get at some of the themes and the reasons behind the lying. Okay, I'm gonna unshare. Okay, let me end with this. Just as one example, I was mentoring a 10-year-old little girl through a mentoring program a few years ago. And I would ask her, we'd get together every couple of weeks, and I'd say, hey, what'd you do last weekend? What'd you do? And she would start telling me these stories of things she did that I was like, there is no conceivable way she did these things, right? Like, she lives in poverty. I know what her parents are capable of doing with her and what they are not. Like, she is straight making up all of these stories. And I didn't know what to do, right? I was like, do I tell her, oh, I don't think you went to Disney World this weekend, really? Or do I just pretend, oh, that's so fun, Disney World, that's amazing, we live in Texas, how did you get to Florida? I was struggling. How do I address it? How do I respond? I know she's lying. How do I respond? And then I started to realize it was my fault, right? I was asking her this question with huge expectations. What did you do this weekend? And I'm telling her things that I did because I'm an adult with money and I can go and do fun things with my friends. And so she's hearing my stories, feeling like she has to compare that, oh, yes, she did that too. And oh, she did something even cooler. And I realized that by me asking her, what'd you do this weekend, was setting her up to a place where she felt like she had to lie to me. And so I needed to change. I needed to change my approach. Instead, it was, hey, did your cousins come over? Have you seen your cousins lately? Or things that I know she does. She probably watched TV all weekend long. That's what I know she did. So either don't ask, right? Doesn't really matter to her if I ask how our weekend was. Or, hey, what are you watching on TV right now? Are you watching any cartoons? What are you enjoying? Things that really actually applied to her took away the opportunity and the pressure really for her to lie to me. So kind of a simple example, but I think it's a good one to kind of throw out here as we wrap up together. So thank you all so much for being here. I do need to put the link in the chat. So let me hang on here for just a moment. There's the form. If you want to click on that, as we wrap up here, I'll give everyone a minute so they can click on it. If you need a certificate that you were here either for adoption hours, because you're doing an adoption process, you're a foster parent, or if you're a staff, then fill that out for me and I will get you a certificate. Or if you want the PowerPoint, just put it on there and I'll probably make you a certificate that you can disregard and just take the PowerPoint if you want that instead. So thank you again. I'm going to give just a second. Any last people that need to click on that link, please grab that in the chat. Otherwise, I will wrap us up. Thank you for joining today. Have a good rest of your day.